theory has to have a priority.
Capitalism and artificial intelligence are the same thing.
The dimension of the future has disappeared.
There is absolutely no representation anymore.
There is no final resolution to contradiction.
Militant proletarian snake handling over abysses never gets much wilder than this.
All right. Welcome to the Dangerous Maybe. I am here with the one and only Nance.
What's happening?
What's going on, man?
I'm chilling.
It's been a minute.
It's
I know.
been a minute. In fact, it has, but
Too long.
Yeah, but I'm excited, dude. This is a good
Me
piece.
too.
This is a good selection. As you said, like it's a super important reading, but it's tucked away in a little book that I think doesn't get a lot of love because it's a book about women. And nobody wants to read a book from Žižek about women. So it's like
Fair point.
it's not the the big bombastic spectacular sublime object or for they know not what they do or whatever. It's
Less than
metastases of
nothing.
enjoyment. It's about women. So but no, I think this chapter is criminally underrated, I think.
So you would agree this is one of the great Žižek chapters.
Yeah, it's concise and it's methodical and it kind of lays it out. And I mean, he reuses some of his stuff, Hitchcock and stuff like that. So not to say, oh, that's a negative, but there's familiar ground for people who've read other Žižek. But it's just very concise, very to the point.
Right. Well, and it's worth saying in Sublime Object of Ideology, he doesn't have this whole thing about how the superego plays into ideology fleshed out yet.
Yep.
And if anybody watches Pervert's Guide to Cinema or Pervert's Guide to Ideology, he's going to talk about the superego, but it's here in this chapter that he really lays out the ideological function of superego, which is going to be of central importance to him throughout the rest of his career.
Yeah.
And I mean, it certainly, has had a huge impact on other thinkers like Todd McGowan,
Yep.
Our friend, and me, and I mean you, and it's interesting. What part of what we're going to get into as we look at the text, you are a big fan of Bataille, and you see a lot of Bataillean resonance here, and Lacanians have this tendency to try to distance themselves from Bataille, even if Bataille truly inspired
Yeah.
the Lacan of Seminar 7, which is this major turning point in Lacan. It puts him on the trajectory to get to, the real and jouissance and objet, and he wouldn't have got there without the influence of Bataille. And so there's a lot of Bataillean connections that you're making to this chapter. And, I'm really excited to read through it because this is one of the chapters in Žižek's work that profoundly influenced me.
Yeah.
And I'm just really excited. I mean, look, this is the first exegesis on my channel on the Dangerous Maybe. And so I'm really honored to have you here to, go through a text that I love so much. I should say, look, we're going to go through this line by line. And so we're not going to do the whole chapter. We're just going to do the first section of the chapter on superego by default. Perhaps we'll come back and we'll do a section at a time because every section in this chapter is fantastic.
Yeah, I think
but
they get better and better as you kind of go down. Like looking at my notes, the kind of markings, the highlights and the markings I made, like as you go further into the chapter, they get more and more. And it's probably just because my excitement picked up more and more. But yeah, it's yeah, we can definitely come back and do more. Also thinking about the piece that we just wrote, and who knows when that'll be published.
We just co-authored our
Yeah.
first essay together. Talk
That'll
about that
be,
for a second.
That'll be coming soon, or maybe it's already out by the time people are seeing this, or who knows where.
Yeah.
But enjoy.
We think
your
it has a home already,
surveillance.
so
Yeah. We're pretty confident. But thinking about just that piece of the process of writing that piece, like there's it's the crux is the superego, and reading through this piece, Superego by Default, it really is just like, it's like, oh, this is where it's at. This is where Žižek is unpacking superego. That, like, this is where it's all coming from. Otherwise, you can kind of just be like, well, and reading Todd, like Todd, I think is pretty clear on it, but having Žižek like expound upon it in his own words, because he doesn't go into super rich detail other places.
No, this is the main text that he's written on superego, and then whenever he talks about superego elsewhere, he kind of presupposes, you know, what he did here.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, and it's just this whole thing that he worked out early on about inherent transgression, and we'll get into all this as we go. I'm just, you know, but how superego helps reproduce society by imposing the injunction to enjoy, and then, you know, particular societies have particular forms of inherent transgression, you know, that define them. But understanding how this works in ideology is one of Žižek's core contributions to ideology theory. So look, this is the first exegesis on the dangerous maybe, and you know how many, you know, Nick Land's a huge influence on me, and John Baudrillard and Mark Fisher and these guys. But I'm like, man, which one do I want to start with? I want to start with this piece on superego. I feel like it's only right.
Yeah, man.
And so I'm excited to get into it. I do want to say, look, for anybody who's tuning in here, Nance and I have been doing a series of discussions on his channel, 3 Billion Nances. And Nance and I are both fundamentally interested in AI theory. Most of our theoretical interests overlap, but especially when it comes to AI theory. And, you know, we've had Todd McGowan on. We had a great discussion with him about artificial intelligence and how psychoanalysis relates to it. We had a great discussion with Nick Land about artificial intelligence. So if you like this discussion here, go over to Nance's channel, 3 Billion Nances, and check out what we've been doing over there. We've kind of been, you know, life has gotten in the way for us, but, you know, hopefully we're starting to get back on track, and we'll be having more discussions like this on my channel and on his. We'll you know, back and forth.
I'm still waiting to talk to Todd about Bataille, but like reading this Žižek has got me motivated. I'm like, okay, now I fucking have to fucking talk to Todd about Bataille.
I'm actually glad you had to delay it, because now after this discussion, that discussion you're going to have with Todd is going to be even richer.
Yeah.
So
definitely. Yeah.
It's good.
This piece, and it'll come up. And unfortunately, we talked excitedly for 20 minutes before we started recording about like Bataille and Žižek and Lacan and this and that. But like, for me, Žižek is quilting Bataille in such an interesting way that I don't want to forget about what Bataille is saying, because you know, the majority of what Žižek is saying, the majority of what Lacan is saying, that is, I guess, preferable or more theoretically sound or correct or whatever. But Bataille is saying something important about accumulation, about waste, about political activity, about political economy, that goes hand in hand with the notion of subjectivity and the superegoic conjunction to accumulate. Bataille's argument is stop accumulating. Like, that's important. That's an important message we need right now.
Yeah. So no, I mean, your point is, hey, Lacanians, Žižekians, don't be too quick to overlook Bataille. There's a Bataille worth saving and worth integrating into, you know, what we're doing.
Yep. Well, and it's evident in Todd's writing too. That's the thing. Like it's not to say that he has been left behind. But I think as far as in the discourse, I think a lot of people aren't even really hip to what Bataille's talking about. They think he's just the weird edgy guy who wants to cut your head off. And yeah, that's there, but I mean, there's so much of Nick is Bataille by way of Deleuze.
Right.
And there's also, I think, so much of kind of contemporary Žižekian work that rhymes really well with Bataille.
And so, yeah, I mean, look, when I went back, I was revisiting the book on eroticism.
Erotism?
Or is it what is it? Death and
Sensuality. That's the one I was reading today because this essay, this Žižek essay, made me go back to Death and Sensuality. So yeah.
Yeah, not too long ago. It was a few months ago. I was revisiting part of that, and I was sitting there going, yeah, like, I don't think this is as incompatible with Slavoj as some people think it is. I think it has a lot to offer. As we'll discuss this as we go along. I mean, I think Slavoj makes explicit things that Bataille doesn't.
Correct.
And that's Slavoj's big contribution to this whole thing. But that said, like, Bataille is certainly tapped in to the logic of how transgression functions in society. And so anybody who's interested in the logic of transgression has to, spend some time with Bataille.
Yeah.
So, okay. Well, Nance, you are the only person here who gets paid to record audiobooks. So maybe I'll let you do the majority of the reading here.
Let's do it. All right. Chapter 3, Superego by Default. Once again, Metastases of Enjoyment on Women or something like that. What's it called? Let's be
It's
6
the
essays
Metastases
on
of
women
Enjoyment
and Causality. And I do think the reason this is lesser known is because of that subtitle.
Yeah, I think you're right. Because if you take that out, it seems Metastases of Enjoyment has a certain allure to it, right?
Yeah.
It draws you in. But if you on Women and Causality, that sounds like a rant. Like, what?
Yeah.
It's an odd subtitle.
It is. It's a bit.
So maybe it didn't do the book any favors.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a speed bump. But I mean, he goes into Antigone and he goes into feminine enjoyment and the gaze and the
phallus
passive versus the impotent, and it's there and it's theoretically sound, but I think it's to be honest, I think it's off-putting for some people.
I agree, and I think the book probably would have had a larger readership without the subtitle.
Yep. So, chapter 3, Superego by Default, a law that enjoys itself.
Hold on, before we even go into it, a law that enjoys itself.
Yeah.
Just some theoretical context here. Look, when most people think about law, they think of the law as that which deprives people of their spontaneous enjoyment. So it seems like law is opposed to enjoyment. But what Slavoj is going to do is show how law actually thrives on certain forms of enjoyment. Or the French term, of course, is jouissance. But the point is, no, like, there is a way that law disassociates itself from enjoyment, and there is a way that law does prohibit enjoyment. But the trick is to come to understand how law also depends on and thrives on certain forms of inherent transgression or inherent enjoyment that actually helps reproduce the system. And that these points of enjoyment that do have a transgressive veneer about them aren't actually transgressive, because what they do is they give people a sense of freedom because, hey, I'm not behaving, or I'm not just being a good citizen. But the point is, you are being a good citizen because you're transgressing in the socially approved ways, even though those are disavowed and you're supposed to keep quiet about it. And this is how you reproduce a system of law or a symbolic order in Lacanian terms, is you do give people enjoyment that is transgressive, but it's transgressive in a way that actually is conformist. And that's the ideological function of this. And okay, I'm just talking about it at this kind of abstract level, so that might have sound overly formal, but when we start looking at the examples and get into it, you'll see how concrete this
Yeah.
actually is. And so I'll just say the last thing I want to say for context is, look, Lacan in Seminar 20, he's the one who says there's only one thing that commands enjoyment, and that is the superego. Enjoy, right? Now, he says that, and then he like kind of pivots away from it and he doesn't develop it. But you got to understand, people who are like hardcore strict Freudians who aren't into Lacan, people typically associate superego with the law, with prohibition, right? And it's Lacan who came to forge this connection between superego and enjoyment. And so the credit goes to him. He just didn't develop it. And so anybody who has a sense of how law is sustained by some sort of inherent enjoyment built into it, you're getting it from Slavoj. He's the one who worked this theory out, and he did it in this chapter. And so we got to give credit to Lacan for, making this counterintuitive theoretical position of linking enjoyment to superego. But we got to thank Slavoj for the actual development of this insight. And so that's we're here to start to look at is what Slavoj has to say about it.
I just like there's like it's almost like an antinomy, like the superego and how it's the permissive transgression or whatever, the inherent transgression. It's like a perverse mirror of the kind of remainder, that which cannot be totalized, like the remainder, the gap, the lack, whatever, like that's where subjectivity rests. But because law and superego kind of work in this way to re-territorialize that would be a remainder, like that transgression, it would be a surplus, it would be a going beyond. But because the law is super egoic in this way, it reincorporates it back into this totalized object that is the law itself. So it's like an inversion, like a perverse inversion of subjectivity.
Well, exactly. It's like the law itself has a mechanism to attempt to substantialize itself, to make itself full.
Yeah.
And because it's like, I'm a law that deprives you of enjoyment, but I also can supply it.
Yeah.
Right. Which increases our investment in it. Oddly enough, it's like when people are invested in authority figures, it's not because of, rule of law and, law and order. It's because they think that the authority figure actually has a surplus enjoyment that nobody else has.
Yeah.
And this is because within the law, there is this distinction between the big other, which is the social authority that prohibits and, establishes proper conduct, etc. And then the other side of the law, the Slavoj talks about it, the obscene underside of the law, which is the superego. And so to properly understand a symbolic order or a system of law, you have to understand how the big other functions in it and how the superego functions in it.
Yep.
To understand the hold that it has on us.
Yep.
And so that again is what we're here to start to unpack with this chapter.
Hell yeah. The proper way to approach the theme psychoanalysis and law is to ask, what kind of law is the object of psychoanalysis? The answer is, of course, superego. Superego emerges where the law, the public law, the law articulated in the public discourse, fails. At this point of failure, the public law is compelled to search for support in an illegal enjoyment. I think that's such a concise kind of way to explain like what's going on, taking law, the big other, the social order, or the, the daylight and the nighttime, like using whatever
Day law,
metaphor,
night law.
yeah, whatever metaphor you need. But that is it. Like superego is this kind of thing that you could almost say it's emergent from this empty space or this breakdown, that the law like redoubles back onto the subject, to keep you that, like, there is no big other, but then the superego comes around and says, well, guess what? There's a superego.
Right. And so, I mean, the way that cashes out is society tells you can't do this, you can't do that, you have to behave in certain ways. And it's almost as if, like, okay, you're just taking from me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're just taking, like, okay, if I obey you, what do I get in return? That's the void, the lack in society that gets filled in by the superego. The superego is like, I'll show you what you get.
Yep.
You get these perverse social forms of enjoyment that, again, seem as though they're transgressive. They give you a false sense of freedom.
Yep.
Right? Because you feel like, well, look at me, I'm breaking the rules. Yeah, but you're breaking the rules in a way that makes you even a greater conformist to society. And so that's how the superego, like, provides us with these forms of enjoyment that keep us glued on the law, which seems to just deprive us of enjoyment.
Yeah.
And so that's the weird thing about law. The law says do not enjoy. That's what prohibition is. Thou shalt not enjoy. But then the law turns right around and says enjoy.
Enjoy.
Yep. But the point is, the superegoic enjoy isn't really just you truly enjoy in any spontaneous way you have. No. It wants you to enjoy all the time. And so in that sense, the enjoyment is kind of an abstract thing. You're just supposed to enjoy. And when it says enjoy, it doesn't really tell you specific forms of enjoyment. But what you find in actual societies is that they do have these allotted forms. Old school societies had various rituals or feasts, right? That Bataille talks about these.
Yep.
Marcel Mauss, Baudrillard is aware of this. He called it symbolic exchange. And so those guys were aware of this, but Žižek comes along and he's like, yeah, but you have to understand, it's not just law versus acts that transgress the law fully. No, it's law versus acts that reproduce the law.
Yeah.
While seeming to transgress it.
They transgress the law in pre-approved fashion.
Yes, exactly. So the point is, when you think you're transgressing the law, that's where you're probably at your most conformist. That's the ideology of transgression for Žižek. And so, I mean, like, we're one paragraph in, but this is where he's going to start taking this.
Yeah. That's the world we see today. Like, everybody thinks they're transgressing some imagined mainstream by going out and differentiating themselves into identity categories and identity groups.
Yes.
I'm going to strike out on my own and be the bold individual. And it's like, that is exactly what capital wants you to do.
Absolute conformity.
Yeah.
That is the pre-approved form of rebellion.
Yeah. All right. Superego is the obscene nightly law that necessarily redoubles and accompanies, as its shadow, the public law. This inherent and constitutive splitting in the law is the subject of Rob Reiner's film, A Few Good Men, the court-martial drama about two Marines accused of murdering one of their fellow soldiers. The military prosecutor claims that the two Marines' act was a deliberate murder, whereas the defense succeeds in proving that the defendants simply followed the so-called Code Red, which authorizes the clandestine nighttime beating of a fellow soldier who, in the opinion of his peers or the superior officer, has broken the ethical code of the Marines.
I say keep going because he's going to finish in the next paragraph. He finishes this thing with a few good men.
The function of this code red is extremely interesting. It condones an act of transgression, illegal punishment of a fellow soldier, yet at the same time it reaffirms the cohesion of the group. It calls for an act of supreme identification with group values. Such a code must remain under cover of night, unacknowledged, unutterable. In public, everybody pretends to know nothing about it or even actively denies its existence. It represents the spirit of community at its purest, exerting the strongest pressure on the individual to comply with its mandate of group identification. Yet, simultaneously, it violates the explicit rules of community life. The plight of the two accused soldiers is that they are unable to grasp this exclusion of Code Red from the big other, the domain of the public law. They desperately ask themselves, what did we do wrong? Since they simply followed the order of the superior officer. Where does this splitting of the law into the written public law and its underside, the unwritten, obscene secret code, come from? From the incomplete, non-all character of the public law. Explicit public rules do not suffice, so they have to be supplemented by a clandestine, unwritten code aimed at those who, although they violate no public rules, maintain a kind of inner distance and do not truly identify with the spirit of community.
It's so good.
Yeah.
So, okay, for anybody watching, if you haven't watched A Few Good Men, go watch it. It really is like it's great how Slavoj summarizes it and the points he makes with it, but you really need to watch the film and experience that that plot go by to really take in the function of the code red or the the form of inherent transgression. And it is this weird thing, right? Because if you're part of a real group, it's not that real membership in a social group isn't that you identify with its explicit characteristics or values. It's that you partake in the way of their preferred form of sin.
Yep.
Right. And that's how you really get to be part of the in-group. It's not just following their explicit rules they claim to live by. It's how you break the rules or how you engage in something transgressive. So the point is, though, if you get caught, this is where the law is at odds with itself, because this is supposed to be, out of sight, out of mind. It's part of you want to be part of the group, you got to do it, but you also have to keep it, sweep it under the rug, keep it quiet about, right? And so if you do raise this to the public level, the other side of the law, the big other, is going to hold you accountable. And you're like, well, but this is just part of this social or this symbolic order. How are you punishing me for doing the thing that makes me a part of you? But the point is the explicit public law to save face, because it doesn't, I mean, if a symbolic order just seems to be utterly, explicitly cruel or sadistic or, obscene, nobody's going to go along with it. You have to maintain this difference, right? And so if push comes to shove, the big other will radically disidentify with you and punish you for partaking in the inherent transgression. But partaking in the inherent transgression is the only way to actually be a member of that big other's symbolic order. So it's such a weird, complicated relationship we have with our ideological systems, with our social orders. And again, like I think Žižek here is dialed into something, like you said, like Bataille is tapped into it on some level, but I think Slavoj gets at like the nooks and crannies and details of it in a way that nobody had quite like him before.
Yeah.
And so this example of A Few Good Men, I mean, anybody who has ever worked a job knows that if you want to be part of the in group at your job, there's certain forms of obscene enjoyment you must partake in. So years ago, you remember this, I wrote a piece, it's on my blog, called Wage Labor and Jouissance. And what I was doing in that one was trying to show how inherent transgression functions in different workplaces. So I talked about two of the jobs I've had. So the first one was when I worked at a barcade as a bouncer, door guy, whatever you want to call me. And then the other one was talking about the form of inherent transgression at the warehouse I work at. So look, there are different forms of enjoyment. So at the barcade, the obscene enjoyment that everybody partook of was after close, everybody would stand around once the doors were locked and start brutally making fun of all the customers that annoyed them throughout the night. And it was a nightly ritual, right? Everybody did it. And it was just vicious, the type of insults. And they would go from, oh, we're good workers, customer service, to the moment the door locked, just hurling,
Vicious,
brutal
vitriolic
attacks.
fucking insults.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Right. And so now, if somebody recorded how all the employees were talking about the customers and put it on social media, oh my God, the place would completely have to issue a public statement and apologize. It could never identify with the very form of enjoyment that helps, lubricate the system.
Yep.
That it keeps the reproduction going. And so that's where you see like the public law of the barcade has to disavow the obscene part of it that actually makes it function. And so you have that, and then at the warehouse, the obscene form of enjoyment is just, instead of talking about customers, nobody talks about customers. We talk about each other. It's heckling, it's ball breaking, and anybody who can't, deal with it can't be part of the group. It's the whole thing. Like you have to have thick skin to be able to deal with this type of inherent transgression, because the way we joke with each other is completely inappropriate, yet it's fun. It makes the day go by if you can deal with it, if you can tolerate it and not be offended. And so the point is, like, to understand workers, you have to understand what their type of inherent transgression is. And this is true of all social institutions, social spaces. And this is especially true of the military. And that is what, I mean, this better than me, right? This is what he's trying to highlight with this a few good men example. If you do not partake in the military inherent transgression, you will not make it.
I think another example that is less extreme than A Few Good Men, but probably more common. Although, yes, murdering someone's taking it a bit too far, but putting bars of soap in pillowcases and beating someone on a bunk bed.
Full Metal Jacket.
That's a thing that I've partaken. I have partaken in bars of soap in the pillowcase. But
Full Metal Jacket thing, and and it's because your life is hell if you don't do it.
Yes. Another form of inherent transgression that's very common in the military and also in like athletics. Gay chicken is a game that we used to play in the barracks, and it's where two dudes would kind of sit there face to face and go in for a kiss, and the first one to move away loses. And he's like, "Oh, you're a bitch," because there's this kind of surplus manliness, masculinity, testosterone. We're all manly men. We're out here, we're gonna die. We're men. So one of the ways that you play around is by being gay. So like we would play gay chicken and just do the most homoerotic stuff we could come up with. And the people who didn't want to partake in that were not fully recognized brothers. Because it was like, oh, come on, if you can't, it's not gay if you're wearing combat boots. Like that's another very common saying in the military. It's not gay if you're wearing combat boots. It's an in joke. And it's like, if this joke offends you, then you're not part of the in group. Like we are so manly, we are so masculine that we can perform homosexuality and we're still manly men.
Well, it's the hairband logic.
Yeah.
We're so masculine that we can wear makeup.
Yep. Or Tupac.
Tupac is so phallic he can do like the like Fabio photo shoots and
yep.
right.
Yep.
And but at some level it worked because if other rappers couldn't pull that off.
Yep.
And
well,
so
to this day,
same
dude,
with
pink, like the color
what?
pink. I have a pink phone and I have pink t-shirts and shit. Like that's because growing up in the 90s, pink was transgressive in this masculine way.
You know who we owe for this? Bret the Hitman Hart. Best there is, best there was, best there ever will be, and it's because he wore pink.
It's true though. Like in the time when I was really kind of coming into my conception of my masculinity, like the fact that I could wear a pink shirt because I was like I could hold down my shit. Like I could stand on my business. I'm gonna wear pink, and if you have something to say about it, like I'll show you why I'm wearing pink.
You see this logic, pimps, right?
Yep.
They'll wear pink suits or turquoise suits, or like
all the sequins, all the bling,
the colors and stuff that most men think isn't masculine. Like, no, that's the whole.
Yep.
I mean, they also call it what, peacocking? Like
peacocking, yeah.
But it's a phallic display,
yeah.
is what it is. And so, I mean, look, in certain situations, if we're talking like a masculine social group, there's going to be the phallus is also going to be at work in however the inherent transgression, however the superego functions. So there's that. But it's funny, like everywhere you go there, you're going to find this. So
yes,
you're talking. I talked about my jobs. You talked about the military. So from my past experience, here's another one. When I was a Christian, a Baptist, even the Baptists had their inherent form of transgression. And what it was is if you really wanted to be in the in group of the church, you would have to go out to eat with them after church on Sunday as a big group. And what would always happen is that they would end up gossiping and being overly critical about other people in the church. And now we know that's a sin.
Yep.
We know, but it was baked into the functionality and the reproducibility of this particular church. And it was their inherent form of transgression. Now, if anybody had and I didn't know Žižek back then, but if I could go back in time and like zap my consciousness into younger me, if I sat there and was like, hey, you guys, are you aware that you're sinning?
Mm-hmm.
You are currently sinning. You are not being good Christians with what you're doing. I would be ostracized. They'd have to get me out of there in order to save the inherent transgression, because social groups are not going to survive being deprived of their form of enjoyment. It is the libidinal glue that holds them together.
That's it. And again, dude, like every time we talk about superego, I can't help but go to Bataille, and just because it's this excess that binds, like it is. Mm-hmm. But also on that note of, if you had gone back in time, like once you make it explicit, you break it. Like it's this breakdown that covers itself back up with superego. So if you make the superego conjunction explicit, then you can cause, we won't say necessarily, because I think the world we live in today now, where we're kind of post irony, like hyper cynical, I think it's a little more difficult the way it operates, because it's a little more complex, where we've done like a double onboarding of the superego conjunction, where we actually enjoy being cynical about cynicism.
Yeah.
But still, in embodied relationships, you can cause a breakdown if you make it explicit. Like if I was in the barracks and I would have said, hey, you guys know this is actually kind of gay, right? Like, yeah, we're doing it because we have a surplus of masculinity, but also there's also something there, isn't it? Like, because I fully believe, like, there was some gay shit going on, but we all disavowed it. But like, so
Slavoj also points out, like, if fantasy is actually the space where you really know what a person is.
Exactly.
Like, okay, so his example, I don't think he actually talks about Grand Theft Auto, but his point is, like, there are video games where, because it's considered a fictional space, you can actually go and act on your desire. So you can beat up police officers or you can rob people or whatever. And his point is like, actually, it's your make believe virtual avatar that enables you to actually be you. The
Yeah.
mask is the mask you put on, the avatar you put on is actually your true self. And you without a mask in your everyday life, that's actually the false self.
Yeah.
And so, but if you start revealing this stuff to people and making it explicit, it causes a breakdown. So look, I mean, we all know this is a social example that really highlights the power of making something explicit, raising it to the official public level where the big other has to address it. So if you're in a crowded elevator, there's 7 people on there, and all of a sudden you smell a fart. And everybody, it's a weird human thing. We can all pretend, as long as everybody remains silent, we can all pretend it's not happening. The second somebody goes, "Who the fuck farted?" It's over.
It breaks down.
It's been registered
Yep.
at the level of the symbolic order. Or it's made official or explicit. Now we all can't pretend, you know. And so sometimes you're mad at the person. Like, don't just shut the fuck
Don't
up.
blow up the spot, dude.
Don't blow up
Don't
the spot.
cause me to face the real. Because
And it actually making it explicit blows up the spot more than the fart blew up the spot.
exactly, like, come on, man, we can all pretend it's, we can pretend it's not here. Well, and the thing is, like, yeah, the fart in the elevator, it's a hilarious example because I've lived through that example.
I have too. We all have.
And also when I go to libraries, for some reason I get really flatulent, and so I'll be walking down the aisles of books, and I'll be like dodging people because I don't want to force them into that weird social relation with me where it's like we can either pretend together or one or the other of us can make this explicit and cause a breakdown. And but that's also the world we live in today. When you go to Starbucks, another Žižekian example, talking about how they're planting green, energy efficient, good for the planet.
They take a portion of the profits,
yeah.
So and invest it in Guatemalan farmers.
Yeah,
and so his point is, it's almost like you're paying for your redemption in the very commodity that's causing a problem.
But when like that's absurd. Of course that's absurd. And when it's pointed out, you can say, no, that's absurd. But also, I'd be willing to bet there's an overwhelming majority of people who do get some small satisfaction from interactions like that. Maybe not explicitly Starbucks, but like consumer choices do comfort us on some level. We should all be aware of the fact that we are all contributing to the destruction of the planet and genocides all around the world every time we do anything. Like, you can't make a choice in the world we live in today that isn't destructive. So, like, I'm not going to get on a fucking soapbox and do the soapbox thing, but also you should be aware that when you are comforted by your consumer choices, that is the superego operating on you and subjectivizing you and interpolating you. So not to say, oh, be a radical, go be a primitivist, but also, no, you should have a level of cynicism. Now, later on in this chapter, he discusses cynicism, and that's not the type of cynicism I'm using. So maybe I need a better word, but you should maintain that distance rather than allowing the superego to operate on you and interpolate you. Don't allow your consumer choices to be confused for compassionate activism.
Well, yeah, because the person who can't help but go, "Who the fuck farted?" That's like the super enjoy. Like, it's almost like a lawful pressure to raise it to the explicit level and make it uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, there's more jouissance, there's more like excessive excitation in making it explicit.
Yep.
Than in just shutting the fuck up.
Yep.
And so there is this kind of pressure. That's why you feel this urge, this pressure to like And especially the superego will take advantage of the truth, like, because you can always rationalize it and say, no, I'm just taking a stand for the truth. Yeah, but this is the point. Like the Lacanian thing is, if you don't understand that there's truth in the fiction,
Yep.
like you're a psychotic.
Yeah.
So the fact that it's pushing you towards the truth in a situation that's going to break the symbolic fiction, that's where it's this movement towards jouissance, almost in a psychotic way.
Man, like talking about the moral and the ethical and the saint and the superego, like we're not going to get to that today, but I'm excited to
But
read
that's a
through
great
that.
part.
I'm really excited to read through that part, because what you're talking about right now isn't informed by that. And also don't see ground relative to your desire. Like that's all in here too. And that's confusing, I think, for a lot of people.
Well, look, I mean, like, no spoiler alert, but I sent you a paragraph earlier of something I'm working on, and I think I've come to, because I've wrestled with what does it mean to not give ground relative to your desire. And to me, I've come to, there's like 3 or 4 different ways you can actually interpret that. But I'll just say for now, I think part of it is it's not giving ground relative to some specific content, some specific thing that you want.
The phantasmic content.
Right.
Yeah.
And look, I mean, the famous Lacan example is Antigone. Well, she has a very specific content. She's not giving ground towards, which is, I demand that my brother have a proper burial. Okay. So one way to interpret it is to go, well, it's about some specific thing that you're just not willing to sacrifice. Like you might be willing to sacrifice for it, but you're not willing to give up on that specific thing. The other way, in light of what the superego commands us to do, there's a way to read it in a more formal sense, which is, no, don't give ground relative to your desire. It means simply embrace the fact that you are a lacking subject as such. Do not fall for this superegoic injunction to enjoy, which is, there's a million different ways I'll talk about the meaning of the enjoy, because the point is, it seems meaningless. Like, okay, enjoy. What does that mean? Be content, be happy, be overly excited, be stimulated. It's not clear what it actually means by that. But one way to read it is enjoy means do not desire.
Mm-hmm.
It means be full, have full enjoyment. Well, if you have full enjoyment, you cease to be a desiring subject. So there's a way superego can be viewed as anti-desire. And to not give ground relative to desire in opposition to the superego is to simply affirm desire as such, not a specific desire, but just the fact that I desire. And what I am as a subject is completely fundamentally connected to the fact that I lack, that I desire.
Yeah, I think it's demand incompleteness is like, that's what I take it to mean. And I think based on what we've been,
embrace incompleteness.
Yeah, it demand it, embrace it. The reason I said demand is going back to the piece that we just wrote and the conversations that we've been having recently. But yeah, like embrace the lack, because it is the lack is where you are free. The lack is subjectivity itself. Yeah, I go read Enjoy Your Surveillance. Everybody go read that piece.
Right. It might not be available when you're watching this. We're not sure when it'll be available, but at some point it will be.
Yeah. And
so we hope you enjoy it, but in a non-superegoic way.
Yeah, we hope you enjoy it. And hopefully we'll have some good conversation also about that piece, because I'm just so excited.
Yeah, definitely.
Like in that paragraph you wrote today, I don't know, like I think taking superego, taking capital, taking artificial intelligence, taking all the stuff that we're kind of taking and not even synthesizing, but really theoretically reckoning with, I think is important for the moment we live in right now. Like this is
Well,
what we are reckoning with.
It's producing new theory. It's making new theoretical connections based on doing fault line theory, based on tearing with these contradictions between Nick Land and the CCRU and Žižek and the Ljubljana school. And like this piece wouldn't have been possible without having, us having camped out on the fault line
Yep.
for a long time now, right? Because making these kind of connections takes time to forge. And so, it takes time, but we're doing it. And so, I mean, again, like I'm just so happy with how it went, co-authoring something. And
Yeah,
it was
dude.
like, at first, we're like, is this working? Like the first time we tried it, it was, but then we got a groove going and it just was super easy.
Dude, I can't wait to write more.
I know we already have this follow-up piece.
Yep.
It's kind of an expansion pack on this first essay. So
Yep.
Be on the lookout for that. So, okay. But like, let's see, where are we at here? We talked about A Few Good Men. I think okay. So A Few Good Men is a really, really great example of this kind of militaristic form of inherent transgression. But my favorite filmic example of it, or at least one of them, but I think this one, because what happens in A Few Good Men is brutal and tragic, it kind of can make inherent transgression seem
extreme,
actually like a transgressive thing.
Yeah.
We need an example where you go, oh, it's transgressive, but okay. I don't think there's a better filmic example of this than one of my favorite movies, Dazed and Confused. Right? What is Dazed and Confused about? It is about a hazing ritual that takes place every year where the next year's seniors completely haze the new group of freshmen. And the girls haze the senior girls haze the freshman girls, the senior guys haze the freshman guys. And so with the guys, they all make these paddles and they go around the last day of school and they just whoop these kids' asses with these paddles. And it's fucked up. It is. But here's the thing. When you watch the film, all the authority figures, all the parents, for the most part, they're all in on it. They're like, yeah, okay, we know it's fucked up. We're letting our kids get abused on some level, but it's what makes them full members of this community. It's a rite of passage. And, it's just the whole film is essentially about, early on, it's about these freshmen being, terrorized by these seniors. But what you start to see is how, especially one freshman in particular, it's precisely because he goes through this ritual that he bonds with these older guys and then gets to go hang out the Emporium. And it's just, the whole film is this great lesson in the social function of the superego. Like each time they're hitting a kid with that's enjoy, right? It's this perverse, obscene logic of the superego at work in the social order. And yet it completely bonds this community together. And of course you can have problems with it. That's the point.
Yeah.
Of course you're sitting there going, with that, man, is that really good to do? Like, nah, like that's fucked up. But what you find about every social order is that it has some obscene form of enjoyment. And if you have one that has so been micromanaged and, has to pass through like corporate inspection and
purity testing,
therapism and all of this, then the explicit level of having to do all of these micro actions it becomes super egoic itself.
Yeah.
So part of the reason you have these obscene forms of enjoyment spurred on by the superego is precisely so the public law, the everyday law, doesn't have to do this shit.
Yeah.
And so it is this weird,
well, and,
yeah.
what happened to solidarity? Oh, come on. How fucking absurd does it sound to say that? But like growing up, or not even growing up, but, you know, coming into my own in my 20s and even in my early 30s, when I thought I was some kind of leftist, and I thought that there was quote unquote solidarity on the left. Like where is that today? There is no home for any, dare I say, genuine leftists on the left anymore, because it's all about these kind of performative, micromanaged, super egoic, yes, I can follow the rules. Yes, I can follow the rules. Well, are you really invested in solidarity and securing a human future? Or are you only invested in this kind of super egoic towing of the line? Like, you can go on the internet today and perform leftist, but have nothing actually to do with any left politics or left movement or anything. Like, it's absurd, dude. I see it with some young people today who all they want to do is like chastise and punish and otherize other people who they should be in quote unquote solidarity with, because they haven't performed their specific, perfectly micromanaged identity yet. So it's like, oh, well, you know, you might be kind of cool, but I still, like, I could never have your back if it really came down to it, because you're not the same hyper specific subtype, super duper subcategory. It's like, come on, dude. Like, that's just absurd to me. Like, people on the internet largely perform this type of differentiation, and that has taken the place of, at least it felt like there was some type of real, genuine, radical spirit at some point in time. And that's all been replaced by this super egoic micromanaging of performances.
Hypermoralism. I mean, this is what Todd talks about, Todd McGowan, in his book Enjoyment, Right and Left. And he says, look, it's liberal leftism now that is kind of the center of super egoic moralism.
Yep.
Where it just, no one is pure enough. No one enjoys like, to the point that everyone has to be constantly reminded of how guilty they are.
Yep.
And the point is, like, the only person who can keep imposing this is the one who just cannot allow themselves to see their own split, their own subjectivity, their own contradiction. The person who does like the kind of cancel thing, they are so absolutely certain in what they're doing that they never are able to even be hystericized. And that's the type of forceful imposition that the superego, you know, assails us with. And so it's almost like they're embodying the superego itself. And the superego, you can't reason with it. You can't mediate with it. It is just an unrelentless drive and towards, like, you know, an impossible duty you can't fulfill.
It's the immovable object. If history is an unstoppable force, then superego is the immovable object. And I say object specifically because I think it's covered. Like, it does. It's eventually replace subjectivity. Like, it's too thingly. You are becoming a thing. You are becoming an object when you just. It's all about superego. It's all about superego, because superego demands that you forego lack and demands that you forego desire for present enjoyment. You can't have desire. You can't be a subject. You have to be a complete present enjoying object.
Right.
And that is taking the world by storm right now. And the internet and the media and the structures and the powers that be are very fertile ground for the superegoic command to be the satisfied object.
Which is precisely impossible to do.
Exactly. And that's the thing. We're covering ourselves
up. That's how it tortures us.
Tetsuo the Iron Man, have you seen that?
Mm-mm.
Fucking good movie. Good recommendation. Actually, it's not a good
Okay.
movie. It's fucking weird. It's hard to watch, but I still recommend it. So it's not a good movie,
Okay.
but I do recommend you watch it. Tetsuo the Iron Man. Have you seen Superman 3?
Yes.
Where the woman gets like sucked into the computer and slowly replaced, and like, so she's a woman in one instance, and then she gets sucked into the computer and turned into a machine and spit back out, and now she's this monster. She's this impossible object. That's what we're doing to ourselves. We are eradicating life itself and replacing it with the thing, the object, the monster. That's what the superego does. If unchecked.
Yeah.
If unchecked.
Well, especially when superego colludes with capital, which is its
Is
own form of
AI.
AI.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it gets, yeah. These connections, again, like these are not connections you're going to find in Slavoj's piece, but this is us taking this a step further.
Yeah.
It's basically reading Superego by default with Marx and with Nick Land.
Yeah. 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 And even with some Baudrillard, because we can't, language is where all this operates. So yeah, of course that's in Žižek, that's in Lacan, but I think Baudrillard is where the rubber really hits the road when you're talking about.
Well, especially since he's the one, Fatal Strategies, Perfect Crime, where
Yeah.
he's realizing like, no, the object has dominance over the subject now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So now that we
Okay,
have probably brought up a bunch of stuff that got people off
Slavoj
track.
will.
Yeah.
Okay, let's yeah. Wait, I mean, have we left anything else?
Yeah.
Okay, hold on. I'll take this one. Let's see. So, sadism thus relies on the splitting of the field of the law into law qua ego ideal. That is a symbolic order which regulates social life and maintains social peace. And its obscene super egotistical inverse. As numerous analyses from Bakhtin onwards have shown, periodic transgressions of the public law are inherent to the social order. They function as a condition of the latter's stability. Bakhtin's mistake, or rather that of some of his followers, was to present an idealized image of these transgressions, while passing in silence over lynching parties and so on, as the crucial form of the carnivalesque suspension of social hierarchy. What holds together a community most deeply is not so much identification with the law that regulates the community's normal everyday circuit, but rather identification with a specific form of transgression of the law of suspension, in psychoanalytic terms, with a specific form of enjoyment. Now, I mean, we basically have already unpacked that, but the thing that he would say is, don't just be too quick to cozy up once you realize this to the specific forms of inherent transgression. They really can be monstrous.
Yeah.
They really can be the worst forms of sadistic cruelty imaginable, right? Which he's got an example in here that's going to, really make that point. But that's what he's doing here, is like warning us, like, once you realize this, and once you realize that this is part of the reproduction of a social order, don't be too quick to just go, oh, okay, it's fine. It's no, half the time it's not fine.
Yeah.
And so that's the core issue with it.
I think not only half the time is it not fine, I think if you uncritically engage, it will always end up in a monstrous location. I think if left unchecked, this will always be monstrous. Even if it's harmless and fun, and even if it's, mutually agreed upon and fully consensual, because it's always going to function to be exclusive. It's always going to function to create a scapegoat for, to use another one of Žižek's favorite operations or whatever. Like it always does function in this way of not just creating boundaries and creating identities, but of creating the other, creating the outsider,
the enemy.
Yeah,
There's
enemy.
something like Carl Schmitt is almost operating in the background here, because the point is, this kind of inherent transgression is what, if you partake in it, you're part of the in group. You're a member. You belong.
Yep.
Those who haven't do not belong and are therefore very easily pushed into the category of enemy.
And it's an enforced non-belonging rather than like a universal non-belonging, which cool, we can extrapolate and we can like, if we're critical, we can understand, of course, we never belong. But if you uncritically engage in this activity, you are enforcing non-belonging on the other, on the enemy. Dude, the Schmitt
in order to
reference is
generate
absolutely...
your false sense of belonging.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. This is okay. So Todd McGowan, again, we keep referencing Todd. Todd's the one who really has thought this through in terms of belonging and non-belonging.
Yep.
And he does it in his book on, politics and universality, and in his, his work on enjoyment on the right and the left. And so, he's done a lot on this. And I mean, so universal non-belonging, like one of his other books, Embracing Alienation, is basically a way embrace universal non-belonging.
Yep.
But the point of these social orders with their superegoic forms of enjoyment is that at the structural level of how this functions, it has a tendency to produce an enemy figure.
Yep. Yep.
So that's another reason to be ideologically critical of it.
Yep.
You want to take the next one?
Let us return to those small-town white communities in the American South of the 1920s, where the reign of the official public law is accompanied by its shadowy double, the nightly terror of the Ku Klux Klan, with its lynchings of powerless blacks. A white man is easily forgiven minor infractions of the law, especially when they can be justified by a code of honor. The community still recognizes him as one of us. Yet, he will be effectively excommunicated, perceived as not one of us, the moment he disowns the specific form of transgression that pertains to this community. Say, the moment he refuses to partake in the ritual lynchings by the Klan, or even reports them to the law, which, of course, does not want to hear about them since they exemplify its own hidden underside. The Nazi community relied on the same solidarity in guilt induced by participation in a common transgression. It ostracized those who were not ready to take on the dark side of the idyllic Volksgemeinschaft, the night pogroms, the beatings of political opponents. In short, all that everybody knew, yet did not want to speak aloud about.
That's it, right? And that's his point. These are not things to just, casually accept and just, well, that's just the way they are. No, these are terrible.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, like, and that's the point, is like, there's a level, there's a continuum, a range of intensity on how bad this can be. I mean, so Baptists getting together after church and talking about other people at the church at Longhorn while they stuff their faces is not on the level of lynching, right? But the point is to see how this logic, this structure is at play in all groups.
Yeah.
And so you always, if you care about ideology and you care about, society, you have to be constantly aware of, like, damn, what are these like unspoken dynamics within these groups? And the thing is, even if the form of inherent transgression is not that intense at a given moment, you got to be on the lookout for when there's eruptions like volcanoes, where it's like, so the worst form of it doesn't happen all the time.
Yeah.
It's kind of sporadic or, spaced out, but when it happens, it's bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's a certain specific temporality at work in each specific form of inherent transgression. Again, for the church, it's after church every Sunday. At the barcade, it was every night.
Yeah.
right? So you have to be alert. There's a rhythm to it.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of what I think, it's important to, be tapped into that as well.
When, as a consequence of the bourgeois egalitarian ideology's rise to power, the public space loses its direct patriarchal character, the relationship between the public law and its obscene superego underside also undergoes a radical change. In traditional patriarchal society, the inherent transgression of the law assumes the form of a carnivalesque reversal of authority. The king becomes a beggar. Madness poses as wisdom, and so forth. An exemplary case of this reversal is a custom practiced in the villages of northern Greece up to the middle of this century. For one day, the women took over. The men had to stay at home and look after the children, while the women gathered in the local inn, drank to excess, and organized mock trials of men. What breaks out in this carnivalesque transgression suspension of the ruling patriarchal law is, therefore, the fantasy of feminine power. When Lacan draws attention to the fact that one term for wife in everyday French is la bourgeoisie, that is, the one who, beneath the semblance of male domination, actually pulls the strings, this can by no means be reduced to a version of the standard male chauvinist wisecracking on how, after all, patriarchal domination is not so bad for women, since, at least in the close circle of the family, they run the show.
And so he's going to take this, further, obviously. But, I mean, the interesting thing about these types of reversals is that everybody plays along with them, but there's a scriptedness to them. Nobody's going to keep playing, keep this inversion going past a certain established date. It's completely functionalized within the social order. And so again, it appears as this, I'm going to use the Baudrillardian term. It's a simulation of transgression.
Yep.
That helps the society reproduce itself.
Yep.
But because it's controlled, managed, regulated, it's not actually transgression in the most extreme, like, weaponized form. It's just part of the reproduction of the social order. And so, yeah, the acts can be incredibly, brutal, like the Ku Klux Klan or the Nazi examples, but it can also be more of this, carnivalesque play thing, where, men and women switch roles for a day or a week or whatever.
Yeah. The problem goes deeper. One of the consequences of the fact that master is always an imposter is the duplication of the master. The agency of the master is always perceived as a semblance concealing another, true master. Suffice it to recall Adorno's anecdote in Minima Moralia about a wife who apparently subordinates herself to her husband and, when they are about to leave a party, obediently holds his coat. Yet while she is doing this, she exchanges ironic, patronizing glances behind his back with fellow guests, which deliver the message, "Poor weakling, let him think he is the master." The opposition of male and female power is thus perceived as the opposition of semblance and actual power. Man is an imposter, condemned to perform empty symbolic gestures, whereas the actual responsibility falls to women. The point not to be missed here, however, is that this specter of woman's power structurally depends on male domination. It remains its shadowy double, its retroactive effect, and as such, its inherent moment. For that reason, the idea of bringing the shadowy woman's power to light and acknowledging its central position publicly is the most subtle way of succumbing to the patriarchal trap. It's like all the old jokes of, like, I don't know, it seems like in the 80s, like, it was just every joke that a dude told was like how they hate their wife.
Right. Yeah.
Like that.
Or complain about a woman.
Yeah. Like just complaining, or even like happy wife, happy life. Like like, yeah, I guess in a sense, sure, but also like that's like making a joke about it is covering up the fact that you actually are doing like terrible, horrible, no good, very bad things to women, but because you can joke around and be like, well, yeah, she actually tells me what to do, like you're doing this farce to try to like, well, it's a disavowal of the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad shit you're doing.
Right.
Like a caricature of making the superegoic injunction explicit, but it's the superegoic permissible way of doing it, of making the joke about it. Oh, you're making a joke about it, so therefore, oh, it's not actually that bad, when in reality, no, it's far, far worse.
Right. Exactly. No, I think here he's just trying to also get, I mean, part of what this example of like husband and wives or men and women is getting at, he's trying to say like there's this hidden collusion or this hidden ecstasy. That, I mean, those are two different concepts, but both are at play in this situation, and both are at play in the relationship between Big Other and Superego.
Yep.
And so, okay, so let me unpack that for somebody. Okay. So, collusion means that they're conspiring together. Okay, so we know what that means. When I say ecstasy, what I mean is, while the Big Other explicitly would disassociate from the superegoic form of enjoyment, that superegoic enjoyment is the, the intimate external, or the external intimate of the Big Other, of the public law itself. And so something that the Big Other disidentifies with is its kernel, like it's at its core. And so same with the superego. Like the superego can't just tell us to enjoy without prohibition being operative. And so prohibition is actually at the heart of the enjoy. And so this is where you see this. I mean, this is how Žižek and McGowan think about dialectics. It's how you start to see how it's not like there's one thing over here and then there's this other thing over here, and they stand at odds with each other, and then they form some synthesis where they combine into one thing. No, it's seeing how the law itself is internally inconsistent with itself. It's split between Big Other and Superego. Both are essential to it. Both are at the heart of it, and yet they have a certain contradictory status with each other. So the law itself is always split or contradictory. But the problem is, law has to try to ideologically conceal that, because if you take your symbolic order to ultimately be groundless, it doesn't have the fullness of a substance. It's not just the way things are. If it's incomplete and if it's inconsistent, then you can stand back and go, oh, things can be different than they are. They're not just fixed. This is arbitrary and contingent. Now, once you have this realization, you can do like kind of the immature nihilist thing, is just go, oh, everything's meaningless and dumb because nothing has a solid foundation. No, the other thing you can do is what I would take to be like the mature position, which is to realize, okay, we only have groundless grounds, but those are the only grounds we have. And so the point is to fight for the best groundless grounds we can have in a social order. But it's only in realizing that the law itself is incomplete, that it doesn't have everything figured out, that it can't map every situation, it can't always get it right, and it's subject to change, that you realize, okay, it is groundless, but that's an opportunity to be able to modify it.
You take it up. You joyously take it up for yourselves. I again, going to Bataille, I've always think of ecstasy as like the accursed share. And the like, once you come into relation with like you can't incorporate it, you can't totalize it, you don't have control over it, but once you realize that, you actually gain a sort of control over it. You're like, well, I can't ultimately control any of this, but I can control me in the here and now and my relation to it and how I act and react to it. And it's like I think it's a mature nihilism. It's like, well, so what if we're all making it up as we go along? We're all big boys and big women and big people in general. We can use our big people brains and figure out the best situation for all of us moving forward. Now, later on in this very chapter, that notion gets problematized too. The universalizing.
Right.
But
Well, I mean,
I don't think it's a problem. Like I really do think it if you work your way through it, then you understand, like, no, ultimately at the end of the day, we know we'll never find the best solution. So we're looking for an incomplete universal or an infinite singular thing. Like, so it's not like we're trying to have our cake and eat it too. It's like, we know we'll never get the cake, but we're still going to keep baking it.
Right. And I mean, look, part of it, I think this realization that all of our most fundamental presuppositions, our most fundamental values are ultimately groundless grounds. It's an opportunity to actually become like a steward of the symbolic order.
Boom.
Instead of, the immature thing, oh, it's all just made up. Lacan's point is the non-duped errors.
Yeah.
Right? Like, if you realize that the symbolic order is a fiction or a groundless ground, and therefore you want to like do away with it entirely, you're completely duped. You're fooled. Like, you have to understand reality is in these symbolic fictions.
Yep.
And if we want to have a better reality, it's tearing with the fictions of the symbolic order, and becoming even more faithful to them in a way.
Yeah.
So,
truly taking
I don't
up.
think realize. Say what?
Like it really is like a truly taking it up, because you're
right. Exactly.
You're really investing in it. You're saying, no, this is real because I said it's real.
Because it's not substantial. Because it's not just fixed once and for all. You actually have a responsibility to the law.
Exactly.
If it was just is what it is, then I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
And so, okay, let's see. I got this one. Let's see. However, once the public law casts off its direct patriarchal dress and presents itself as neutral egalitarian, the character of its obscene double also undergoes a radical shift. What now erupts in the carnivalesque suspension of the egalitarian public law is precisely the authoritarian patriarchal logic that continues to determine our attitudes, although its direct public expression is no longer permitted. Carnival thus becomes the outlet for the repressed social jouissance, Jew baiting riots, gang rapes, ... And so, I mean, it is interesting, right? Like, okay, if the public law basically frowns upon patriarchy, what's going to happen is that patriarchal dynamics are going to be moved over to inherent transgression. And in a sense, it's going to make them even more eroticized.
What do you think we're seeing today with the manosphere bullshit?
Exactly. The trad Y, all this kind of stuff.
Yep.
Right? People dressing up like it's the 1950s and shit, and somehow that's transgressive now. This logic of the superego, like what gets counted as public law versus what gets counted as obscene superego, it can make sense of all of these weird dynamics. What was the YouTuber guy back at like the height of the culture war that said like
PewDiePie?
Conservatism is punk rock?
Oh, was that Gavin Not Gavin Newsom.
No, it was another guy.
Gavin. Fuck, that guy's a bitch, dude. Gavin, for real, I hate that guy. He's a crybaby.
Does he still? I don't even know the guy's name anymore.
But
there was this guy,
dude. He was the Proud Boys guy.
No, I didn't think it was him. Who did he? What was?
Oh, was it Tim Pool? Is Tim Pool the guy that said conservatism?
No, I think
rock. I don't know. They're all wieners, dude. I mean, I'm a wiener too, Not trying to be all toxic and shit, but also like you guys are bitches.
Who was that guy? It's gonna drive me nuts.
I thought it was Gavin, the Proud Boys guy, dude. Gavin.
It's not. It's. Well, I mean, he might have said something along those lines, but there's a YouTuber who.
Was it Tim Pool?
No, it's a guy I never hear anybody talk about anymore.
Oh, the Milo?
Not Milo. What the hell was that dude's name?
Michael Malice? The libertarian?
Nope.
Was it one of those guys like in that same space though, like the libertarian manosphere stuff?
Yeah, well, I think he was over on the right. I don't know, like when Ben Shapiro kind of burst on the scene.
The gay guy who Ben Shapiro said he wouldn't go to his gay wedding? Yeah, well, it was him.
No, it's not.
Dave,
no, I don't think.
Ruben.
It wasn't him. It was this other guy, and I'm just drawing a complete blank. I think he had a 3-word name.
Sargon of Akkad.
Nope. We're like naming everyone except this dude.
It wasn't TJ the Amazing Atheist, was it? No,
Nope.
He's a lefty. Or at least he is.
And maybe I'm misremembering. Maybe it was like the right is punk rock now or something. I mean, okay, I'm not gonna remember this dude's name. The point is, okay, it's gonna drive me nuts. I know this, but until we find out this guy's name. But
comment down below.
The point.
Comment in the
You're right. Somebody will know in a second.
Yeah.
The point is that how the hell does conservatism become punk rock, which is conservatism is the new inherent transgression? Well, when you make liberal leftist modifications to the public law,
yep,
right, you end up creating that as the default setting. And so the superegoic by default is actually going to be modified itself.
Yep.
And so this is why it's hard to simply make like straightforward trajectory on, progress.
Yeah.
Because the very thing that has been the ruling ideology that you find to be oppressive or exploitative or unjust, whatever it is, you're still attacking. For the most part, you're disagreeing with the values of that society at the explicit level of the public law. So if you do conquer that, if you get cultural hegemony and you force a change, all of that stuff ends up being pushed over to the superegoic underside of the law and almost can have more power over there. So this is why I'm saying, like, people who, activists and all them, if they don't understand how the law actually functions in this way, they're going to constantly be beating their heads against the wall because they're not understanding, like, what the hell is going on? Why does, like, how the hell is being, a trad wife transgressive? Like, that's the whole
fucking, there's a song and it's like, no wonder why we lost the war. The counterculture can't count. I can't remember who it is. I want to say it's Atmosphere. It might be somebody else, one of the other Minnesota rappers, but the counterculture can't count. That line has always stuck with me. Like, no wonder why we lost the war. The counterculture can't count. That's always stuck with me because, yeah, if you want to, like, if you place value in being countercultural, then once your current side wins, then you're actually setting yourself up for failure because the new counterculture is going to directly oppose your views. So when you get caught up in historical narratives and when you start to believe in kind of teleological arguments and when you start to think we're on the right side of history, I think you're setting yourself up for disappointment because a lot of young people think they're progressive, but what they really are is just invested in being countercultural. because when we talk about history, we talk about power and oppression, and we talk about, oh, we got to do what's right by the minorities. Well, if all you're ever concerned about is doing right by minorities, then you're always going to be like, it's going to be this unending churn of just fucking different subgroups over and over. And that's the world we live in today, is nothing but subgroups. So yeah, you really do need to come to terms with like this kind of super egoic cohesion of society or the social or history itself, and really understand, like, no, you have to stop entirely. That's why I love equating enjoy to accumulate.
Which Todd does that. I mean, I think the first place he did it was in enjoying what we don't have.
Yeah.
But he's done. I think he does it in pure excess. And yeah, I mean, as far as I know, he's the Lacanian theorist who really linked enjoy to accumulate.
And that's, for me, right where Bataille swoops back in. And it's and Baudrillard as well, because symbolic exchange. Well, what is symbolic exchange? Well, that's us choosing what to do with our surplus, rather than accumulate and save up our surplus and invest,
waste,
and think about future.
Expenditure.
It's expenditure, and we can call it waste, even though waste is such a weird word. It has a lot of weird connotations, but it's a choice of expenditure, and we're saying, I choose to expend this on the here and now, on the subjective moment that I'm having right now, that I know can never be totalized and can never be repaid. So in a sense, from this super egoic logic, from this capitalistic logic, from this cyber positive logic, I am wasting it. But from the logic of the subject, I'm investing it in my subjective relations. So
it's the most meaningful or valuable thing.
And that's the only thing we can choose. Because no matter what consumer choice you make in the world we live in today, you're partaking in fucking the machine god. You're partaking in bootstrapping Robo Cthulhu by making your consumer choices. So the only choice you have to make is to stop accumulating, start expending, we'll say, start wasting.
Yeah. That's good. Yeah. Why don't you take the next one? We're almost done, actually, with this first section.
Insofar as the superego designates the intrusion of enjoyment into the field of ideology, we can also say that the opposition of symbolic law and superego points toward the tension between ideological meaning and enjoyment. Symbolic law guarantees meaning, whereas superego provides enjoyment, which serves as the unacknowledged support of meaning. Today, in the so-called post-ideological era, it is crucial to avoid confounding fantasy that supports an ideological edifice with ideological meaning. How, otherwise, are we to account for the paradoxical alliance of post-communism and fascist nationalism in Serbia, Russia, etc.? At the level of meaning, their relationship is one of mutual exclusion, yet they share a common phantasmic support. When communism was the discourse of power, it played deftly with nationalist fantasies, from Stalin to Ceausescu. Consequently, there is also no incompatibility between the postmodern, cynical attitude of non-identification, of distance toward every ideology, and the nationalist obsession with the ethnic thing. The thing is the substance of enjoyment. According to Lacan, the cynic is a person who believes only in enjoyment, and is not the clearest example of it precisely the cynic obsessed with the national thing.
Right. So, I mean, there's a lot here. I guess the main thing I want to highlight, look, you can say that Slavoj's greatest contribution to the theory of ideology is that he says ideology does not just function by meaning, or in the Marxist sense, by false consciousness.
Yep.
Meaning, or, conceptualization, that is not the core of an ideological regime. right? It's the form of enjoyment that ideology provides, that's its glue, that's its anchor, that's what keeps us hooked on our society. And Slavoj's the first one to really make enjoyment a core dimension of ideology. And I mean, his one of his other main books, right? For They Know Not What They Do, enjoyment, jouissance, as a political factor.
Mhm.
So enjoyment has this core fundamental role in shaping ideology and politics. And most critics, most theorists of ideology always thought of it in terms of meaning, in terms of demands, in terms of orders, right? And they didn't see the libidinal dimension of how all this works. And so, like, yeah, you can have an ideological system where the meaning contradicts the enjoyment, right?
Mhm.
You can have one like that's we are all universalists over here, but what really holds them together is some sort of particularistic uh, type of enjoyment.
We Don't Talk About Bruno. That's a song in a Disney movie. I fucking watch a lot of Disney movies. I watch more Disney movies than real movies probably. But We Don't Talk About Bruno is a song in Encanto. And
Okay.
it's the context is there's a family, one of the members of the family is named Bruno, and he's been ostracized from the family for some strange reason. But the whole family comes together to sing this big song and have a big dance, and it's this moment of celebration. And they're singing, "We Don't Talk About Bruno." But in the act of singing the song, like they're talking about the fact that they don't talk about Bruno. So
I love it. That's
yeah, like that is the enjoyment. Like it's such a high point in the movie, and it binds the family together when they sing, when they explicitly state, "We don't do this."
mhm.
It's a good song
Right.
too.
So the enjoyment contradicts the meaning.
Exactly.
And so no, that's a great example of that actually. And so that's the thing is like, I mean, look, a concrete example of this kind of is how, you could have a leftist organization that is very, very explicitly universalist, right? Um, and then what holds it together is some type of in-group prejudice towards a certain group,
They exclude they exclude white trash.
there you go.
I've
Yeah.
seen that firsthand.
Mhm.
Where you try to be part of a universalist movement, but because I am poor white trash and I do have some of the tendencies of someone who grew up poor white trash, I have been otherized, and I'm not doing the "oh woe is me" thing. I'm saying it also happens in high-minded liberal spaces where all they want to do is be paternalistic to the inner city minorities. They don't actually embrace
Right.
them and actually honor them as full members. They want to bring them around as tokens of their saintly goodness.
Right. And so, I mean, of course, the explicit values would be anti-racist,
Yeah.
but the type of enjoyment they get from doing what they do has this paternalistic racism
Yeah.
baked into it.
It's
So
gross.
that's again, and the point is not like the point is not to be moralistic and to point your finger and go, "Oh, shame on you." The point is for you to have a greater perspective on your groups and networks of association where you're like, fuck, I didn't see that me doing this or but holy shit, now I see something. And there are obviously group dynamics that need to be changed or even brought to an end.
Yep.
And so understanding this logic equips you to much better navigate these types of situations. And sure, it's going to take discernment. You're not always going to have an explicit rule to go off of, but it gives you a familiarity with what's really going on in symbolic orders. That, I mean, for me, it changed everything for me when I learned this shit.
Yeah. This
And then like, I mean, I just want to say, like, I mean, he goes into this elsewhere, but um, consequently, there is also no incompatibility between the postmodern cynical attitude of non-identification, of distance towards every ideology, and the nationalist obsession with the ethnic thing.
Mm-hmm.
The thing is the substance of enjoyment. So, okay, so on the one hand, it's like there's two different ways you can read this, the ethnic thing. So, on the one hand, the Germans were completely obsessed with their Aryan thingness, whatever their substantial thing that made them Aryans. On the other, the flip side of it is you always have some ethnic scapegoat you blame
Yeah.
for the corruption of your thingness, of your, of your the enjoyment you supposedly once had that made you fully belong and blah blah blah. And so this is like this core dimension of ideology for him is who is, how is one trying to approach your identity as a member of a nation, right? And then how are you blaming somebody else for the corruption or dysfunctionality of that identity?
Yeah.
And so half the time, what the superego is spurring on is some kind of fucked up, transgressive behavior towards, a racial minority.
Yeah.
Like the Ku Klux Klan example, like the Nazi example, right?
Yeah. Consequently, there's also no incompatibility between the postmodern cynical attitude of non-identification. That right there, the postmodern cynical attitude of non-identification. Sean Middlestat and I have been talking for a while about modernity, post-modernity, history, identification. And that there's a lot there. The postmodern cynical attitude of non-identification doesn't set you up to be free of identification. Like just because you have this cynical distance or whatever, you can still create an in-group predicated on that cynical distance itself. And I think that's the moment that many people are in right now, is they think they are not duped. And in so being, or in so believing that they are not duped, they are falling prey to this type of ideology of belonging and non-belonging. And I think it's easier now for younger people to see beyond race as a construct and latch on to other things that are centered around kind of behaviors or centered around performances. And so I think it's appropriate that Žižek talks about the ethnic thing. Not only is it elucidating and it makes it really easy to see what's going on, it's also true, I think, that race was a major motivator of history up until quite recently. And
Yeah.
And now I think, not to say it's not a problem, it is still a large motivator of history and horrible things, but I think now behaviors are coming to replace characteristics, because we're hyper connected now. So we no longer have to rely on assumptions about people's character based on characteristics. Now we make assumptions about people's character or people's essence based on their performed behaviors, because we're always on. We're always performing.
Yeah, that's good.
It's fucking scary.
Look, I mean, what he's doing here too with this thing between postmodern cynicism and nationalistic enjoyment or nationalistic racism, right? Scapegoating. Look, we go back. What did we just see him talk about? There's a split between ideological meaning and ideological enjoyment. They don't have to be consistent, and oftentimes they are contradictory.
Yep.
So you could have somebody who's like, man, identity, like, I mean, people don't talk like this in normal conversation, but you can take somebody who's like, man, identity's bullshit, and it doesn't mean anything. I don't have any essential essence. You are whatever you want to be, blah blah blah. And yet they go into comment sections with anonymous accounts and engage in incredibly essentializing racist
Yep.
jouissance.
Yep.
And the point is, it doesn't have to be consistent.
Yep.
Like on some level, it even works better
That's it, dude.
because there's just this disassociation between these two levels of ideology. And so somebody who's, kind of nihilistic or inessentialist or, whatever, man, can also be completely stubborn and pathologically fixated on the racial other at the level of enjoyment.
Well, dude, I think that accounts for why like vitriolic racism is all over the internet.
Mm-hmm.
Because on the internet, like that distance is built into the internet. That cynicism it's there, and you can overcome it, I think, but you have to actively choose to overcome it. You have to actively choose to present your authentic self, which you can never do in the first place. But like, it's like young boys especially are super duper fucking toxic. Like, the internet is supercharged with racism and bigotry right now.
Do they carry that shit around? Do they make that explicit in their day-to-day lives and face-to-face interactions?
They act like wholesome little boys in real life.
Right. So here's the thing, right? What did we talk about earlier with Slavoj about video games and Grand Theft Auto?
Yep.
The internet for many people is not a place where real people are. It's almost a phantasmatic landscape, like playing Grand Theft Auto, where you're free to tap into, whatever dark fantasies or obscene forms of enjoyment that you prefer. And it doesn't seem to be real. It's just, and that's why so many of these kids who do this, they probably don't walk around with any urge to do this to anybody in person.
Yeah.
It's this weird effect of the medium itself. I mean, this is where Marshall McLuhan comes into it. And there's a whole thing that you and I could do at some point where we talk about different media forms in relation to jouissance, like a Žižekian McLuhanite mashup. Because I think McLuhan obviously wasn't thinking jouissance. And to be fair to Slavoj, I mean, he obviously talks about the internet and everything, but he's not a media theorist in the way that Marshall McLuhan was. So there's a lot of ways to think through inherent transgression and jouissance in relation to different media forms.
Yeah. Well, speaking of media, this next paragraph is probably my favorite of this first section, where he talks about the voice.
Take it.
So, all right. The difference between law and superego also coincides with that between writing and voice. Public law is essentially written, precisely and only because it is written. Our ignorance of law cannot serve as an excuse. It does not exculpate us in the eyes of the law. The status of the superego, in contrast, is that of a traumatic voice, an intruder persecuting us and disturbing our psychic balance. Here, the standard Derridian relationship between voice and writing is inverted. It is the voice that supplements the writing, functioning as a non-transparent stain that truncates the field of law while being necessary for its completion.
So, it's so great.
Yeah.
And look, here's the thing. All of you, everybody has experienced this in their lives, and it really kind of does start with the parents. Maybe this sounds overly Freudian, but I just think Freud is right with this. Look, your parents are human beings, but when you're a young child,
they're superheroes.
They're demigods or something, right? And so here's the thing with being a human being with responsibilities and bills to pay and shit, but also a demigod in your kid's eyes. So every parent has both functions. Like this split between big other or written law and superego or law of the voice. This is completely embodied in everybody who's a parent. So as a parent, you always are giving your kids instructions. You're guiding them in proper behavior. You're telling them what they can't do, what you expect them to do. And these are all the explicit level of the word, of the commandment, the no, the explicit no, the explicit value, the explicit principle. Okay. But here's the thing. the parent's voice, the tone of voice is often at odds
Mhm.
with the explicit message.
Mhm.
And so kids are like, I mean, sarcasm is that you're such a good little boy, right? Like, okay, so you're telling me one thing, but then the way you say it says something else to me. And of course, this opens up the pathway to desire, not knowing
Mhm.
what the blank spot in the other, the cave void. You're saying this to me, but what do you really want? And it's precisely because the explicit words that are, oriented around the big other are often contradicted by the tone of the voice, which is the superego.
Mhm.
And
God bless you. Oh, God bless your little heart.
exactly.
Shut up, bitch. Don't say
Yeah.
that to me.
Think about like at the explicit level, a parent can say, "I'm so proud of you."
Mhm.
And if they say it a certain way, it's devastating, it's traumatic.
Yep.
Even though the explicit message seems like it's a good one, the tone of voice completely inverts what its meaning is. And so, and then look, there's just also this whole thing with the desire of the other, where you tell me something, but it's clear that you want something else from me.
Mhm.
And so Peter Rollins has this great example. I've always loved to use it, but it's his. But a kid who gets bullied at school, keeps getting bullied at school, comes home. It's a big problem. The parents are pacifist types in the sense that they just like it's never right to hit, it's never right to engage in violence. You have to be the bigger person, blah blah blah. But this keeps going on and on and on, and it gets to the point where uh when the parents are telling them, we're very proud of you that you don't hit back, they can, in the voice, the message of the voice is, hit this motherfucker already.
Yeah.
Like, and so the explicit messages don't punch, but the implicit message coming from the tone of the voice is, enjoy, punch that motherfucker, right? And so this is this weird friction between big other and superego, embodied in the concrete discourse of the parents, between the parents and the kid. And so that's where voice is so important in a kid's development, because they're gauging, like, wait, what, like, you tell me this, but the
But what are
place
you
it comes
really
from seems to
telling
be
me?
saying the opposite.
Yeah. Hmm.
And so, yeah, it's just, this is like the first encounter with the split authority figure and all that comes with that.
So, all you parents out there, be honest with your kids, but you don't have to tell them everything. But you can tell them you don't need to know right now, or you could tell we'll talk about it later, or you can tell them you don't. That's not your business. Going back to like Žižek's parenting. Like, you don't have to say, "Oh, you're gonna go to your grandma's and we're all gonna enjoy it." You could just say, "No, you're gonna do what I'm telling you to do because you have to do what I'm telling you." Like, that's being
He
honest.
thinks that's more honest.
That is the way to be honest with your kids. You should always be compassionate, but you should always be honest. But being honest doesn't mean you have to be the pushover postmodern parent. Like, you can set down hard limits.
No, and that's when he says superego by default. We didn't really get there now, but his point, and Todd McGowan develops this more. But we've had a shift in society from the primacy of the big other and the no to the primacy of the superego and the enjoy or the yes.
Yep.
Right. And so superego by default means superego now has the default position of authority in our social order over the big other. It's not that the big other is completely gone. Of course, we understand prohibition, but we feel like our more important duty is to enjoy ourselves, to be happy.
Yep.
And we feel like we've let ourselves down if we're not happy all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And that is the offspring of the superego. And so traditional authority said, I don't care if you're happy. You don't have to be happy. Just do your duty.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, postmodern authority says not only do you have to do your duty, you have to like it.
Yep.
You have to enjoy it. You have to be happy in it. And you see this in wage labor. I'm sorry, the guys in factories 100 years ago didn't have to perform happiness for their overseers, for their managers. Now you not only have to work, you have to be happy and bright and have a smile on your face. And it's extra labor. Like,
Yep.
because what you're trying, the ideological function is, I live in a good society. Everything here is on the up and up. This is all great. That's the ideological function of the super egoic smile.
Well, and that's where it really becomes monstrous, because that's when it's not just exploitation of your labor power, but it's like it's exploiting your soul. Like it's taking
Right.
up, it's filling in the empty
Enjoy your
space.
exploitation is
Yeah.
that's the dynamic.
And that, like, that's what's really at stake in the world we live in today. It's not just like, oh, we're all being exploited, because yes, of course. Like, yeah, we haven't solved that yet. They tried it with communism. It didn't work. I don't think we should try it again. But it's gone beyond exploitation at the labor level, and it has gone to this, thank you, sir, may I have another? And if you can't perform,
Yes.
thank you, sir, may I have another, then you're going to fall out the bottom of society, and you're going to be
Or you're
ostracized.
going to lose it.
Yeah. And that's not what we should be striving towards as a global civilization, as a global
It's
society.
a shitty way to live.
We should be striving to protect subjectivity first and foremost. We can deal with all the other stuff later. And I think we need to have some radical restructuring and radical reimagining of what even is society. But first and foremost, we're running the risk of losing out on subjectivity. Like, we're trained, it's not just us, it's kids and their kids. Like we're setting up a world where there is no room for dissatisfaction, for discomfort, for lack, for desire itself. That's what the stakes
For
are.
inefficiency.
Yeah. Yeah, that's truly, truly monstrous.
I agree. And superego helps spur that on.
Yeah.
Again, it's the collusion. Capital does it in the economic form, and then the psychic, internalization of capital is the superego, and capital is geared towards the production of artificial intelligence, and that artificial intelligence that surveils us is going to be super egoic. It's going to monitor our heart rates. It's going to monitor our neural activity, our blood pressure. It's going to, are you really happy, or are you faking it to make it,
dude.
as you put it? No, it's a nightmare scenario.
Yeah. And it's not even off to the gulag with you. You're going to be ejected off the planet into the sun. They're going to shoot you off into the sun. You're going to fucking burn up, and that sucks. All right.
Yeah. So let's close this out. This is the last little paragraph of this section. Another facet of this obscene underside of the law is exhibited by the custom of the power elite in the USA. A rumor is rife that every year the entire power elite, top politicians, managers, military, journalists, and the wealthiest, gather for a week in a closed resort south of San Francisco in order to socialize. What they actually do there, for the most part, to indulge in obscene games that suspend the dignity of social rituals, hard drinking, dancing, singing vulgar songs in women's clothes, telling dirty jokes.
So that was the Moloch. What was it? Alex Jones always talks about it. That place. Why can't I think of the name? It's a place in California. Let me see if I can do a Google search real quick.
Okay.
But what's interesting about that is currently in the news, it just came out that Ghislaine Maxwell has said, "Oh yeah, Donald Trump didn't do anything bad. Donald Trump never
was never on the island."
Yeah, he was never on the island. But a few years ago, Jeffrey Epstein was arrested for running a ring of very bad stuff, and Ghislaine Maxwell was like his key associate, and they had a list, and they've been talking about this list for like 4 years, and now all of a sudden, wait a minute, there is no list. Wait a minute, Bill Clinton made that list up. Hillary Clinton made that list up. Obama made that list up. I just think it's absurd that, like,
Thanks, Obama.
yeah, like this stuff really does go on. The power elite really are. Not only are they going to Bohemian Grove, that's the name of the place, that this camp south of San Francisco, the closed resort Bohemian Grove. Not only is Bohemian Grove a real thing where they probably, all they do there is probably dance and sing and do jokes and probably do some inappropriate stuff, but also Jeffrey Epstein happened.
Right.
And that is part of the world we live in today. So part of being able to order overnight everything you want on Amazon, Jeffrey Epstein is a necessary part of the world where you can have overnight delivery on anything you can imagine. And I mean, I don't know,
because capital doesn't make it, doesn't MC and prime accumulate.
Yep.
That's its only value, its only drive.
Yep.
And so if a human psyche is overtaken, you know, if that drive gets its hooks in them at the most fundamental psychic level, well then, you know. So the question is there a type of value outside the superegoic capitalistic system of value?
I think there is. And I
So
think
do
it has
I.
to do, I think it has to do with waste. I think it has to do with the opposite of accumulation.
Symbolic exchange.
But we'll be spending the rest of our lives thinking about that, talking about that.
Right. So
but-
I mean, look, hey, we did the thing. Like, this is the core, the first section of this chapter. This is where he lays down the fundamental theory that he's going to develop and extrapolate on as we go. The next section is, to me, equally as important. The split subject of interpolation.
where he gets an
This is where
Althusser?
he look, you know, Mladen Dolar, his friend and collaborator, he was very influenced by something Dolar wrote on this, but Slavoj took it, and this idea of split interpolation, like, I'm not gonna give it away here. We'll come back to this, because we are gonna, at the very minimum, I mean, because we're always going from one thing to another in what we're reading. But I really do love the idea of going through this whole chapter. But bare minimum, we are going to at least do the next section because it's so great.
Yeah.
It's you know, interpolation is associated with Althusser, who's one of the great theorists of ideology. But this modification, split interpolation, this is Žižek's, you know, big reworking of Althusser, and it gets at what Althusser didn't see.
Yeah.
In interpolation.
It's fucking
So-
awesome, dude. It is awesome.
Exactly. So we're going to come back and do that. But okay, I think we're done here for today. Anybody who's new to the channel, thanks for, you know, being here, watching the video. More is on the way. More videos are on the way on Nance's channel. We're working on essays. My
Got
first
a-
book is soon to be re-released.
Yep. Got a course coming up in October with Cadell.
Yep, that's on the way. And so, yeah, lots of exciting stuff on the horizon. So come back, stay tuned into the Dangerous Maybe, and we'll see you next time.
Hell yeah. Peace, guys.
Thanks for being here, Nance.
Hell yeah, man. This is
Later.
great.